Hey there, I'm author Sarah A. Chrisman, and today I'm going to tell you about the 1897 full-scale replica of the Parthenon, temple to Athena, goddess of wisdom.
Tales of Chetzemoka fans have noticed the ways that classical mythology is woven into the series, like when Jacob gives Addie a copy of Bullfinch's mythology, or when Ethel names her pet owl after the Greek goddess of wisdom. Anyone who's read my 2020 diary has some impression of the deep significance of that the classical gods hold for me. Back in 2021, I made a video giving a brief overview of Victorians in the classical world. Today I'd like to go a bit deeper into one particular detail of classical influence on the Victorians, the 1897 replica of the ancient temple to Athena, goddess of wisdom. The Victorians were well aware that those who don't know history are bound to have a very skewed view of the present. A strong sense of history and their own place in it was very important to people in the 19th century, and the Victorian era witnessed both a medieval revival and a revival of interest in the classical world of ancient Greece, Egypt, and Rome. A solid foundation in the classics was just considered part of a good education, and familiarity with the ancient Greek divinities and their Roman counterparts was absolutely taken for granted. Classical themes and iconography were used extensively in everything from high art and architecture, like the works of Sir Lawrence Alma-Tadema and buildings like the Iowa State Capitol, to cheap advertisements for everything from corsets to beef extract to perfume. The 1893 Columbian Exposition in Chicago gave an extra intensity to the interest in classical architecture which already existed. Chicago had made a conscious decision to model all their exposition buildings along classical lines, and after seeing the wonders of this white city, suddenly nearly every community in America wanted their own classical structures like the ones they had seen in Chicago. When Nashville held their own exposition in 1897 to celebrate Tennessee's statehood centennial, the crown jewel of this new exposition was a full-sized replica of the ancient Parthenon. Before we go on with the story of Nashville's Parthenon, let's go back over 2,000 years to the original Parthenon, where the people of ancient Greece worshipped Athena, goddess of wisdom. The origin story of Athens states that Athena became the city's patroness after winning a contest against Poseidon to see who could give the city the most useful gift. Poseidon created a spring which turned out to just run with salt water, not very sustaining. But Athena created the olive tree, a source of valuable wood, but even more importantly, the source of olives for food and oil. A further contest to really settle the city's patronage beyond any doubt involved a chariot race. Poseidon may have thought he had a strong advantage in a chariot race because horses were, after all, his own special totemic animals. However, he made a major miscalculation when it came to choosing a charioteer. Whereas Poseidon's charioteer in the race was Amphitrite, a sea nymph, Athena's charioteer was Nike, goddess of victory. The outcome of this really shouldn't surprise anybody. The Parthenon of the Golden Age of Greece, whose ruins still stand in Athens today, was built on the footprint of an even earlier temple to Athena, which had been destroyed by the Persians in the 5th century BC. When Pericles came to power around 461 BC, he proclaimed the need to build an even bigger and more majestic temple to Athena, and he was aided in this project by his particular friend Phidias, who was arguably the greatest artist of the ancient world, and certainly at least one of the greatest. The building of this great temple gave work to all of Athens: carpenters, modelers, metalworkers, stonemasons, dyers, gilders, ivory softeners, painters, embroiderers, engravers, and all the sailors, helmsmen, wagon makers, keepers of oxen, and mule drivers who transported all the materials, not to mention rope makers, linen weavers, leather workers, and quarrymen. And of course, above all else, let's not forget the priestesses of Athena, who had to be consulted throughout the project. All working together, the Athenians managed to complete the superstructure of the Parthenon in an astonishingly quick 9 years, and the statues and ornaments were in place just 5 years later. This ancient Parthenon, dedicated in 438 BC, was 238 feet long and 111 feet wide, with a height of 65 feet at the peak of the pediment. Inside, the eastern chamber was a storeroom for treasure, spoils of war, allied tribute, and personal dedications to the goddess in gold, silver, bronze, and ivory. These precious items included weapons, shields, jewelry, furniture, lamps, statues, boxes, baskets, and other offerings for the goddess. And I haven't even mentioned the 170 tons of coined silver kept in the Parthenon's treasury, or the inside of the eastern chamber, which contained the greatest treasure of all, the artist Phidias's great statue of the goddess Athena. 42 feet tall, her skin was literally carved from ivory, and her eyes were rare jewels. Her robes were plated with real gold, weighing between 23 to 2,500 pounds. These gold robes served as a backup fund for the city of Athens. In time of need, if the high priestess gave her permission, the city could remove gold from the statue as long as this debt to Athena was later repaid and replaced. And no matter how badly one might treat human creditors, it would be a very foolish mortal indeed who defaulted on a loan from the gods. Before we leave the Golden Age of Greece and move onwards through time, I'd like to point out one more thing. In ancient Greece, the temples to male gods were served by male priests, and the temples to female goddesses were served by female priestesses. The key to all that treasure within the Parthenon, the literal tons of gold and silver and everything else, that key was held by a woman. If we had infinite time, we could go into the 3rd century Common Era sack of the Parthenon by a Germanic tribe, its later conversion to a Christian church, its 1456 conversion to a mosque when the Ottoman Empire took over Greece, or the catastrophic explosion in 1687 when the Venetians invaded and the Ottomans carried out the phenomenally bad idea of storing gunpowder in the ancient temple. But let's skip over all that and get back to 1897 Nashville. Out of all the ancient structures they could have chosen to recreate, the people of Nashville chose the Parthenon as a symbol of their self-proclaimed identity as the Athens of America's South. It was also a bit of an angry poke at the Yankees because they were drawing a parallel between the Persian sack of Athens in ancient times and the Union Army's destruction of Nashville during the American Civil War. Regardless of their aspirations, Nashville didn't have the money or other resources to recreate the Parthenon in real marble like the original, so they took a page from Chicago's 1893 exposition and did the project in wood lath and plaster. The funds weren't yet available to recreate Phidias's great statue of Athena Parthenos either, but a slightly simpler statue of Pallas Athena was erected outside the east entrance. This 40-foot plaster statue had been sculpted in Paris by Miss Enid Yandall. Then it was transported to Nashville in 3 sections. Lacking the 170 tons of coined silver and piles of dedications to the goddess which had filled the original Parthenon in ancient times, Nashville filled their 1897 replica with fine art from around the world, and people flocked to see it. After the exposition was over, the other fair buildings were dismantled and Centennial Park was slated to be chopped up into residential lots, but the Parthenon was too beloved by that point to allow its destruction. Nashville needed a plan. By 1902, Nashville's Board of Park Commissioners succeeded in transforming the exposition grounds into a public park. After the park was secured, the years 1920 to 25 saw extensive restoration and reconstruction work on the Parthenon itself. After all, it had only been intended to last as long as the exposition did. Now the people of Nashville worked to make it more permanent. Plaster and wood lath were replaced by reinforced concrete. For strength, and to make the building's dimensions more accurately mimic the original in Athens, metal lath and wire mesh were incorporated into the structure. The Nashville Board of Parks purchased casts of the Elgin marbles, sculptures from the original Parthenon which are currently in London. Artists Leopold Schultz and his wife Belle used these casts to recreate the Parthenon pediment sculptures, which were put in place on the building's exterior, and inside the building the casts themselves are now on display. The same artists who recreated the pediment sculptures were also involved in creating the great bronze doors on the east and west sides of the building. These doors are over 7 feet wide and 24 feet high, the largest paired bronze doors in existence. By 1925, the exterior restoration of the 1897 Parthenon was completed, but questions remained as to the ultimate use of the building and the fate of its interior. Should it continue as an art gallery, as it had been in 1897? Or should the much more ambitious project be attempted of recreating the true Athenian Parthenon, the ancient temple to Athena, goddess of wisdom? The ultimate decision was to have the best of both worlds. The artwork went into the spaces representing the treasure vaults, and very long-term plans were set in motion to recreate Phidias's great statue for the central chamber. The Nashville Parthenon reopened to the public on May 20th, 1931, but the Great Depression and then the Second World War seriously slowed down progress on the project. A small 4-foot statue of Athena was placed in the Great Hall in the 1930s as proof of concept, but it would take decades of dreams, work, and fundraising before a full-scale replica of Phidias's statue would grace the hall. Begun in 1982, the unpainted and unadorned statue was unveiled in 1990. So she stood for 12 years, and then in the summer of 2002, her skin and eyes were painted to resemble the ivory and gems of Phidias's original, and the gilding process began. The money wasn't available to actually plate the statue with 2,500 pounds of gold like the original had been, so a very thin gold leaf was used instead. It is still real gold, though, 8 pounds of it. And so she stands today, a monument to Athena, goddess of wisdom, craft, and technology, shining forth in all her glory. In her right hand she holds a 6-foot statue of Nike, goddess of victory. She shows us a powerful lesson that we should all take to heart. If we ask wisdom to guide us in all our endeavors, then we shall hold victory in the palm of our hand.
Thank you for watching today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a nice thumbs up, and remember to tell your friends about my books. Happy reading!